Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. In this episode, I am bringing you a little training / Q&A that I did on Facebook and Instagram, which is kind of cool because you get in on the Q&A actions, people ask questions, but I'm talking about the 4 main places to start when it comes to balancing minerals without doing any testing with me. And of course, you know that I love mineral testing and I talk about it all the time and it's my go-to lab, but I want to bring this conversation to light so that I'm not making it out to be like you can't balance your minerals without doing testing. Now, of course, you're going to get the most customized way to do that when you do the testing, but there are common deficiencies and holes that most of us deal with that we can start to balance on our own if we just focus on where we're getting them from our food, mindful supplementation. And so I'm going to go through these today so you can start your own mineral balancing journey without necessarily having to do any testing. So let's jump in. Okay, so we're talking about minerals today, and we're talking about which minerals to focus on without, like the most important ones you should be focusing on without me having to look at your labs. And so this are basically wanted to give you something that you could do and take and do on your own and start now is without having to do labs, right? So if you saw I did a live the other day on Facebook and talked about why we start with the minerals and why the minerals are the first thing we do when we're looking at helping with chronic symptoms, helping balance things out. It's always the minerals. We never start with the hormones. We never start with the gut. It's always with the minerals before we do anything else. And I talked a little bit about the hair tissue and mineral analysis, the mineral testing that I do, and how that helps us really find where the holes and the deficiencies are. And so I wanted to bring this kind of like part 2 to that conversation to see exactly how you can get this process started before ever having to do the labs. Now, I will say this as a disclaimer and as like a preface to this conversation is I am still a firm believer in doing mineral testing. And I mentioned this in a live the other day, but I love the hair tissue and mineral analysis because it's easy, it's super affordable, it's the most cost-efficient way to get a lot of data from a functional lab, and it gives you a lot of data without having to spend, gajillion dollars on doing 12 different labs to try to put pieces together. It really does give you a lot of good data. So I'll say that first and foremost. But if we're looking at, okay, what are some steps I can do now? What are some things I can start doing now without having to do any lab testing? What minerals should I be focusing on? So small little piece before I say this, the reason why the minerals are so crucial, and this is what I talked about in the lab I did yesterday, is because they are the building blocks of everything. We call them the spark plugs in the body because nothing in the body happens without minerals. Like every enzyme, every hormone, everything that happens in your body starts with the minerals. They're the precursor to everything. And so before we focus on balancing the hormones, before we focus on healing the gut or whatever, we have to look at the minerals. It's affecting all of that. So if we're looking at, okay, what are the main minerals? Because there's a ton of minerals. There's a bunch of macro minerals, there's some micro minerals. So where do we focus if, without having done the labs, where can I start just doing things on my own? So the 4 big macro minerals are where I'm going to start. The macro minerals are the ones that you need the most of, you use the most of, and they're the most easily depleted in times of stress, or the most easily displaced and not bioavailable. The 4 big macro minerals are calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. That's where I would start. Okay, so I'm going to break these down real quick. Magnesium, I'll talk about first because we use that the most. Most of us are deficient in it, and it's most easily depleted in times of stress. Your adrenals use more sodium and magnesium than any other part of the body. And so during times of stress, when we're in chronic stress, these are the 2 that are going to get depleted the quickest, the most, the easiest, because they're going to use it the most. So magnesium, I think the number statistic is technically like 65% of us or something are deficient. I really think it's much higher than that. It's the way we grow our food. Our soil is depleted in that really important mineral, and we just don't get enough of it from food. So this is one of those minerals that I always recommend people supplement, right? I'm not big on
obviously food first, but magnesium is one of those I recommend everybody should be supplementing. So when we're looking at magnesium, we're looking at the right form and the right dosage, right? The right form is magnesium glycinate. We want to find one that's most absorbed by the body. It's most bioavailable. Your body's going to use it. And a lot of times I had so many clients where they're like, I can't take magnesium. It just makes me poop. Well, you're using a laxative. If you're taking magnesium citrate, it's a laxative. And yes, that's essentially what it's for. It's to make you poop. So, and your body's not really absorbing much of that at all. So if you want to find one that your body's actually going to absorb, magnesium glycinate is the best form, the best version of that. And ideally, you're taking about 5 times your body weight in terms of milligrams. So for the average size person, man or woman, it's going to be between 500 and 700 milligrams. And so that's the other piece I find so often is most supplements aren't enough. It's just not giving you enough. 150 milligrams of magnesium really isn't going to do a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, especially when the majority of us are deficient. And so magnesium is going to be a big one that I'm going to say first and foremost. Even without looking at your labs, I can tell you that you need more magnesium. So that's going to be the first one. The second one I mentioned, so remember there's 4: calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. I want to talk about calcium next. Calcium is a structural mineral, right? It's supposed to be in your bones and in your teeth. So when I'm measuring it in your hair, tissue, and mineral analysis, you're literally sending in some of your hair. When it's showing up in your hair, which is a tissue, this is a problem because it's structural. It's supposed to be in your bones and in your teeth. When it's being pushed out into your tissues, this is when it starts to cause issues in the body. Calcium is released as sort of this reaction to stress. So when you're in a time of stress and your body's releasing cortisol, the calcium gets pulled out from the structural parts of your body as a protective mechanism against that cortisol that's being blasted into your cells. And so it can, when this is done over and over and over and over again, the calcium builds up into the tissues. It can create what's called a calcium shell, and it starts to create this sort of shell around your cells that affects permeability. So it's affecting what's going in and out of your cells. The biggest impact that I see my clients when I'm looking at labs and I'm looking at the calcium, the biggest impact is going to be first and foremost on your thyroid, because it's going to affect how your thyroid hormone is getting in your cells. All of our cells, every cell in your body has receptors for your thyroid hormone. And if there's this shell around it, it's not getting in, right? So the thyroid is going to take a big hit. Your adrenals are going to take a big hit. It's going to end up affecting, it can build this shell kind of around your nerves. And so it's going to affect neurotransmitters, causing things like brain fog, depression, just kind of mood swings, trouble concentrating. I've had clients who thought they had ADHD before, literally wanted to go get on medication for ADHD. We did their mineral balancing. Oh, lo and behold, it's high calcium, right? So the calcium piece, it's not so much about not ever taking calcium again. It's making sure that calcium is going to the right place, which again, it's a structural mineral. It's supposed to be in your bones and in your teeth. So we use cofactors to push the calcium to go back into the right places. So we look at things like vitamin K, boron, magnesium, which I've already talked about. These are all going to help push it to go in the right place. So and this is a conversation for a whole other day, talking about supplementing calcium, because I have my own thoughts and beliefs about this, but this is not the purpose of this conversation. But if you happen to be supplementing calcium, you must have to bring those cofactors into the equation and making sure that you're shuttling that calcium where it needs to go. So making sure it has things like boron, vitamin K to push it where it needs to go. So that's the second one. Third one, I've already mentioned already, but I'm going to talk more about it, is sodium. So remember, there's 4 big macros. Now I'm talking about sodium. I mentioned a second ago that your adrenals use more magnesium and sodium than any other part of the body. So during times of stress, during times of chronic stress, both of these minerals are going to be used a lot. And your adrenals require a lot of sodium just to function. And so you might have seen, if you're watching this or listening to this, you might have seen or you've been seeing things about adrenal cocktails and adding salt to your water. And I've had conversations the past few weeks where people ask me about what's this salt thing in the water? So here's the thing. Again, I'm not going to get off track because I have a whole rant. I wouldn't say rant. It's very informative. It's on my podcast. I talk about sodium, and I have a whole thing where I go into kind of the misconceptions and all that about sodium. I'm not going to go deep into it, but the fact is that we do need sodium. Our body requires sodium. Your adrenals cannot run, and your body in general, but especially your adrenals cannot run without sodium. And so when I'm looking at the labs, a lot of times the sodium is going to be either really high or really low, right? And there's different reasons for each. When it's really low, this is a sign that your adrenals have been like running so hard, so much. Now they're in this exhaustive phase where they're just struggling. We call it sluggish, right? Sluggish adrenals. If it's super high, this is an indication like we haven't quite got to that exhaustive phase yet, but like your adrenals are running like way more than they should be running. And we want to address like, where is this acute source of stress happening and how can we address it? Because it's impacting your sodium levels. So the main thing when we're looking at the lab itself with the sodium isn't necessarily like to eat more sodium or whatever. It's just kind of looking at how the stress response is impacting that sodium level. But the fact is, if for the purpose of this conversation, I'm talking about how you can do this on your own. The fact is we need sodium, but we need the right kinds of sodium. So this is why if you've been seeing like the adrenal cocktails or like people talking about add salt to your water, it's not just adding table salt to your water, first and foremost. So please don't go add table salt to your water. The salt matters. The salt makes a difference. It's about getting that unrefined salt with all of these other when you buy really good quality unrefined salt, it's got anywhere from like 80 to 90 other trace minerals in it. So when you're taking in that sodium from the salt, all those other little micro minerals are pushing the sodium where it needs to go. So it's not just, we hear the whole, high sodium causes high blood pressure and all this stuff. This is talking about like sodium, the pure sodium chloride. When you're getting that unrefined version with the sodium intact with all these other microminerals, this is how the sodium gets where it needs to go. So the adding salt to your water is really literally just remineralizing your body. So you can help support your sodium levels by adding salt to water. Things like Celtic sea salt is like top quality. You can look at, I love Redmond. Redmond is another one. They use the really good quality salt of, good question. I was just about to say that. I like the Redmond. And so they get it from the Great Salt Lake. And so it's really good, high quality sea salt. And honestly, those are my two top picks. And so if you can't find the Celtic sea salt, and I know like it's getting really trendy, so a lot of people are buying the Celtic salt. So if you can't find it, just go for the Redmond. And I'm not being paid to say this. Like, I don't get paid by them. It's really good quality. And they have, electrolyte mixes. They have the salt. They have like the, different seasoned salts and stuff, but it uses that really good quality salt. And it's just really good quality. So the Redmond is the brand, the name of the brand. I would recommend that. And as far as the adrenal cocktails, like the adrenal cocktails are great too to do on a regular basis if you feel like that is helping support your adrenals. But I think if you're prioritizing remineralizing yourself every day, when I say remineralize, I mean adding minerals back to your water. I mean not drinking just plain water all day every day, because this is such a misconception around a lot of people. Like we think we're hydrating, and I've been there too. So let me say that I've been there where I was literally drinking like a gallon or so water a day, just plain water. We're really dehydrating ourselves. We're diluting those minerals in the body when we're not remineralizing the body. So if you're drinking plain water all day and you're not remineralizing, what do you do when you drink a lot of water? You pee. What are you peeing out? You're peeing out minerals, and we're not putting those back in. So we want to focus on, drinking electrolytes, remineralizing our water, and putting all of that back in that we're peeing out. And the sodium is a big part of this. And especially if you are under chronic stress, you have been under chronic stress, you're trying to heal your adrenals, sodium is going to be a big part of it. Sodium, magnesium, both of those are going to be part of the adrenal equation. So that's the third one. The fourth one I'm talking about macrominerals, if you're just jumping on, macrominerals, is potassium. So I mentioned potassium a second ago, but potassium is one of those macrominerals that we need the most of. And I mentioned a second ago how much it impacts your thyroid. And whether you're, diagnosed as hypothyroid or whatever, thyroid disease, whatever, you don't have to be diagnosed with any of that to have a sluggish thyroid. I've worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of clients who've never been diagnosed. They go to the doctor and they get their thyroid labs done and everything's normal, right? But we look at the labs and I'm like, no, your thyroid's actually running really sluggishly, which is what explains your, slow metabolism and all these other, thyroid symptoms. Potassium is crucial for your thyroid. Now, there's other, functions of it, but I feel like it's the most important one to talk about. And potassium is one of those. It's the recommended daily allowance for potassium is it's like 4,500 milligrams. It's a lot. And I can probably say nobody is getting that much from food. Like you would have to be eating a lot of bananas and avocados and all the things to be getting that much. So this is one of those where if there's holes, there's deficiencies, you want to make sure you're including it in your supplements. I'm not saying supplement all of it. Food is still important. Like I said, food is always first. But it's one of those that's really hard to get, especially if you have a sluggish thyroid, you have anything related to your thyroid. Like I 100% recommend everybody supplementing if that's the case. So the foods that are highest in potassium are bananas, avocados, and coconut water. Those are the top 3 I typically recommend. So, you can I have a recipe. I tell my clients, like, make a potassium smoothie, and you just put all those things in it. You could add, whatever else you want. But those are really the 3 best ways to get potassium if you're wanting to increase your intake, and then supplementing it, right? And I say your body kind of has a threshold when it comes to supplementing potassium. It's not going to take in more than probably I don't know, I think it's 800 or 900 milligrams. So again, it's a big difference between that and what the recommended daily allowance is. So you want to prioritize the food and the supplementing of the potassium. But those 4 in and of itself, again, even if I have never looked at your labs, I can guarantee you that we can all do a better job of figuring out those 4. So that was sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Magnesium is one I always 100% recommend supplementing. Calcium is one where I talked about it's really more about sending it where it needs to go. So it's prioritizing those cofactors, and it's also addressing stress, right? It's also addressing the stress response is what's going to pull that from your bones and your teeth. And so it's managing stress. The sodium, right? Remineralizing yourself, adding that salt to your water, using that good quality salt when you're cooking or whatever. Focusing on taking in electrolytes every day. And then it's potassium. And it's, even if you're not supplementing it intentionally, it's being intentional about the food so that you're at least getting in some of those high potassium foods each day. So those are the big 4 I would start with. Now there's 12,000 other rabbit holes we could go down with minerals, because obviously I could talk about this all day, but those are the main 4 I would start with. So if you never do a functional lab with me, if you never do mineral testing, if you focus on those 4, I can promise you that things will start to shift, and do that intentionally, right? I talked about magnesium. If you are just hopping on, go back and listen, because I talk about dosage and form of magnesium. So there's specifics to this, and there's things that you have to be intentional about. But just focusing on these 4 alone can make so much of a difference. The quality of your salt. If you have table salt in your house, go throw all of it away. Just get a good quality salt to cook with, to bake with. Put a little bit in your water, a little pinch here and there in your water. Remineralize your body. It's going to make a difference. If you do, in fact, want to do mineral testing with me and you want to look at the labs, so you can comment on this video, you can send me a DM, we could talk about it. So it's a good question. So on Facebook, I'm on both. So if you're watching me on Instagram, that's why my eyes are I'm also on Facebook. So this is such a good question. So she's asking, what about LMNT? It's funny because I've been having conversation with some other FDNs, functional practitioners. We've been talking about LMNTs. We talk about different electrolyte drinks and stuff. So if you don't know, LMNT is a brand of electrolyte mix. And for a long time, I was recommending that. And then I'm not saying never buy it again. I'm not going to bash the company because it's great. But here's the thing with LMNT. LMNT is really high in sodium. And there's a lot of sodium in it. And granted, if you're, an athlete, you're training, you're sweating a lot every day, that's what you need, right? You need to supplement it. But for the general average person, I think LMNT might be too much. Taking every now and then I think would be fine, but this is why I like the Redmond Relight is the Redmond brand of electrolytes, their own little brand of electrolytes. I've been recommending that to my clients now because it's lower in sodium and it has all these other trace minerals because it uses that really good quality salt from the Great Salt Lake. So I recommend doing something. There's another brand called Cure. I think it's Cure. That's a really good one, and they use really good quality sea salt, and it's just not as high in sodium. I just think that for everyday use, the LMNT, I think it's a little bit overkill. Now, if you're sweating a lot, you're training, you do the sauna a lot, and you're sweating buckets, I'd say every now and then it's probably an efficient way to replenish your sodium stores. But I think on a regular basis, the LMNT is probably just too much. So if you're looking for a good electrolyte drink or mix or whatever, Redmond Relight is what I would say first. That's my first choice. Cure is another good one. And then, there's another one too that I've been using and recommending clients. It's called Beam, BEAM. And I feel like I need to say this again. I'm not being paid by any of these people. I'm just recommending. These are the ones I recommend to clients. Beam, BEAM, Beam Minerals is another really good one. They have a multi-mineral. It's a liquid. It's a liquid. They have a multi-mineral, and they also have an electrolyte mix. It's two different ones. That one's also really good. They use humic and fulvic acid, which are really good binders that help. Like there's a lot of studies around it, how it helps get rid of things like glyphosate and, pesticides and environmental toxins that we're exposed to. So it's really good quality. So Beam Minerals is another good one that you can drink. And it literally tastes like water. Like there's no flavor or anything. You just can drink it. It's, whatever. That one's really good too. So those are probably my top picks. I love the questions, so keep the questions coming if you have other questions. But that's also just in terms of like balancing overall minerals. I think Beam is a really good one just because it's so comprehensive. Like I forget how many, on the label you can see there's a ton of micro minerals that it lists on there that it has. So that one's a really good way to just for mineral support. It's a really good supplement there. So if nobody has any more questions, or if you do and you're watching this on the replay, I'll come back and answer. But yeah, if you're interested in doing mineral testing to get a look at exactly what's going on with your minerals, feel free to message me, comment on this, send me a DM. Like I said, the HTMA hair tissue mineral analysis is it's the cheapest way to get answers, really, if I'm being honest. It's very cost efficient. It's super easy because you're literally just sending in some of your hair. The test itself is like $68. I mean, it's you can't beat it. And if you know anything about functional labs, you know that they're not cheap. So it really is a great way to get data. And I mean, when you're looking at this lab itself, it's not just about the minerals. So we look at the individual mineral levels, but it looks at heavy metals, it looks at toxic elements. So it's giving a look at, overall toxicity in the body, how your body is eliminating these toxins in the body. But it also is a whole page on here with ratios, and all of these ratios are giving information about your adrenals and your thyroid and your carb metabolism and your nervous system and your hormones and your liver. Like there's so many pieces, there's so much data we can collect just with looking at these minerals. So that being said, message me if you're interested in finding that kind of thing out for yourself and diving into your minerals and getting your custom mineral protocol, because the mineral protocol I do with that is all custom to your HTMA. So it's custom to the results we get in your labs. And if you don't want to do labs, go back and listen to this video and start with these first four macro minerals. This is just starting there. Like I said, just starting there is going to make a world of a difference in overall function of the body. Because remember, our minerals are the spark plugs. Like everything starts with the minerals. So this is where we start when we want to balance the body. We start with minerals. Okay. I would love to hear your thoughts, your takeaways, your questions on Facebook, Instagram, all the places. So let me know, and I will see y'all next time, in the next video.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.